Hi, I'm Dre. I'm your mindset coach and mentor of change, and I want to welcome you to another one of our Thursday workshops where we work on ways to improve our overall well being, transform our professional life, and to boost our financial life. And we do this by focusing on ways to conquer your fears and self doubt so that you are able to become the champion of your dream life. We are on the execution mindset this month, so we'll continue in our theme of just how to manage stress and avoid burnout. If you have been listening to the other two episodes, I'm glad that you're here with us again. If this is your first time, I just encourage you to make sure you catch up with the other ones. You can either go to forecasthope.com where you can sign up and then I can send you these episodes by email in case you miss any of the live ones. Or you can just reach out to me directly in the Facebook group. You can just go online and type in talkmindsetchange.com and that will direct you to the Facebook group. In today's episode, we're going to talk about managing the stress and fears that usually come whenever massive change takes place in our life. This massive change can be something that you initiate, or it can be something that you have no control over. It could be something that is positive, at least you are welcoming of that change, or it could be something that is negative, or it is unexpected or something that you would prefer not to happen. Before we get started, I just want to let everyone know, if you are interested in taking advantage of a free 30-minute Conquer Your Fears and Self-Doubt coaching session with me, all you have to do is go to forecasthope.com/coaching. In this session, we'll identify the false and constricting beliefs that are sabotaging your life. We will go over some of the mindset strategies that you can use to transfer your mind from one of fear and failure to a mindset of accomplishments and confidence. And you will leave this session renewed, rejuvenated, and excited to finally start living your dream life. Again, if you are interested in taking advantage of this free 30-minute coaching session, all you have to do is go to forecasthope.com/coaching to sign up. Now we can jump right into today's workshop. So we're going to go over 5 fears that you will often find accompanied when anyone has drastic and massive change in their life. First, we're going to talk about the fear of losing control. And in particular, we'll talk about maybe someone who you were close with, a family member or close friend who died and passed suddenly. And then you're faced with the reality of, what does that mean for me? Is someone else going to pass this close to me? What does my life mean? Am I doing what I want to do in my life? And the stress that you would feel because you have this desire to make some sort of a drastic change, it can be overwhelming and it can create anxiety inside of you. Another way that you could react, and because we're all different, if someone has passed close to you and maybe you felt like you could have done more to save them, so now you have stress related to just the overall guilt that you feel, maybe even anger where you're like, this person was young, they had a whole life ahead of them, maybe some unforeseen or some unfortunate event cost them their life. But if it's something that you felt you could control, the guilt that you would feel, maybe let's say you're a healthy eater and it's someone that you care about and they passed of diabetes or they caught cancer and passed, and you're thinking, if I just told them a little bit more about healthy eating, if I just pushed a little further, instead I was worried about how they would react, so I just didn't say anything to them. The anxiety and the fears that we're talking about that is going to be created by this stress are always going to be related to just that feeling that you don't have enough control over your life, or at least the feeling that you're not doing everything that you believe you can do. And whenever you find yourself facing this situation, first and foremost, you're going to have to take a step back. You're going to want to forgive yourself first and foremost. If it is true, and let's say that it is, you're going to have to forgive yourself because there's nothing that you can do from this moment forward. Now, when you take a step back, you might actually realize that you had little to no control over that situation. So instead of you feeling like, well, I have to regain control of my life, so maybe I will decide that I'm going to eat this type of food or I'm not going to eat that type of food, where you're making some sort of an irrational and drastic decision because you're trying to comfort yourself. Instead, take the step back, don't make any rash decisions, and let's just examine these emotions and see if we're able to come to some sort of a reasonable conclusion of what triggered them. Oftentimes, our first thought whenever we have this fear of a loss of control is to do something to remind ourselves that we are in control. So if you were thinking of like a terrorist attack of some kind, or at least some murder that happened in a city or something of that nature, if it happened in a movie theater and you're starting to think anybody could just die at any moment in any place because the world's getting so bad, well, I'm just not going to go to the movies anymore. And while that is an act of control and it may bring you some false comfort, you're not actually dealing with the reality of your stress. It will be more realistic to accept the fact that you just don't have that much control over outside circumstances, and that's okay. I don't have to double down on my internal circumstances that I can control, where I overreact or make a brash decision. Instead, just accept the world the way it is and do your part to make it better. I don't want you going out of your way to do something unreasonable either, but I also don't want you to overreact where you start restricting your overall growth, where you're not trying to do anything. And that leads us into our second fear, which is the fear of failure. So in the case of a massive change in your life, maybe it is a divorce that happened, and you're thinking, oh, everybody in my family, they have wonderful marriages. I'm the only one that's messing up. I don't know why this has happened to me. I'm just such a failure. Or if we're talking about you losing your job, then you're like, everybody has stability, everybody has an income, and here I am, and I can't keep a job. I'm such a failure. And these negative thoughts, that inner critic inside of you, you don't want to give it any opportunity to continue feeding you these doubts. Because what most likely is happening is you're exaggerating your failure and you're exaggerating their success. There is not a marriage that is not having its ups and downs. And sometimes it is not an indication of you as a person, right? I don't want you to say, well, I'm a failure, I'm a klutz, I mess up. Maybe it has to do with the decisions and priorities that you made. And those things are things that you can change, so it's okay to explore those thoughts, because that is something that you can control. So as unfortunate as a divorce may be, maybe you discovered that you were focused more on materialistic things, or maybe you weren't focused on the right aspects of that person when you're looking for your significant other. Instead, maybe you're looking for something that is superficial or something that isn't long lasting. And that could be either physical or lust, that could be something that's materialistic. But either way, you've learned something from that experience. Instead of you overreacting and saying, okay, well, I can't trust other people, so I'm going to not be with anyone. And the opposite end of that is also true. So instead of you saying, well, I define myself by my relationship, I feel like I'm a failure now that I'm single, I'm just going to get in the first relationship that I can get into. Both reactions are overreactions, and they're not going to help you deal with that stress and anxiety. Whenever you find yourself facing that fear of failure, you have to allow yourself to accept the reality that I'm going to fail, and I'm probably going to fail a lot. And as long as I'm okay with that, as long as I take one life lesson from each of my failures, then I'm okay. I personally try to make sure I don't make the same mistake twice. That if I learn something, that I try to write it down, or I try to jot it in a notebook or on my phone, because I want to make sure that that stays close to me. I don't want to make the same mistake again. I don't want to forget all the lessons that I learned and the feelings that I had, whether those were doubts and regrets, whatever the feelings were. Once I got over it, I want to make sure that I don't go back there. We don't want to make the same mistake twice. As long as you do that, I think you'll be fine, because you understand that failure is a part of growth. If you want to live a life that ensures you never have to experience failure, you'll find that that life has little growth. You're just going to be doing the same thing over and over every day with little outside of your comfort zone experiences, and that really isn't a life to live at all. Understand that failure is a part of success and that it leads to growth. And as long as you can accept that and understand that the decisions that you've made thus far are based on the information that you have thus far. And in the example of someone who lost their job, it could be a situation where it's the first in and the last out. The company could be downsizing. There could be so many events outside of your circumstances that you should not be blaming and ridiculing yourself. If it is for some reason something that you truly believe that you fell short on, then take that as your life lesson. If that means I need to come on time more, if it means I need to communicate with my supervisor more, if it means I have to ask more questions before I do my work, whatever that lesson is, it is not a you problem. It is a learning lesson and something that you can take away from that. And so I just want you to understand that, and you'll find that it really will help you when you're trying to manage your overall stress. Because a lot of the stress, again, is the demands that we put on ourselves or the demands that others put on us. And a lot of times these demands are unrealistic. To demand of yourself that you will never fail is already setting yourself up for failure, because we're all going to fall short at some point in time. And a close cousin of the fear of failure is the fear of inadequacy. Whenever we face failure, it is oftentimes that it turns into a fear of inadequacy. That's what leads to the inability of us to get back up and start again. It is not failing within itself that is a problem. It is when we believe that failure is going to happen every time we try again. And because your mind doesn't like failure, and no one really does enjoy failure, and whenever you find procrastination starting to sneak in because of your fears of inadequacy, you'll find that that is the first step to the death of any of your goals or aspirations. Procrastination is the idea that I know I should do something, but there is something keeping me from doing it. And when the fear of inadequacy is coming into place, it is the belief that every time I try, it is not going to work out. And it's a really tough place to be, and that leads to a very stressful situation because you can't avoid the spotlight forever. If it's a meeting at work, someone may ask you for your opinion, and then you're thinking, oh, I'm just going to mess this up. I wish they wouldn't have asked me in the first place. And it becomes like a self-fulfilling prophecy. You're going to want to deal with the fear of inadequacy by just taking some steps to build your confidence. I actually went into great detail about this, so I'm going to save you time by not going into a lot of this. But if you have not listened to the 5 ways to boost your self-confidence, I invite you to go to the letter U, forecasthope.com/episode 6. And in that, we'll go into lots of details on ways to build your self-confidence. Because the only way to get over the fear of inadequacy is to improve your perception of yourself. Fourth is the fear of uncertainty. And anytime you think about uncertainty, if you see it on TV, it is actually something that we all are fascinated by. We watch it on a regular basis. One of my favorite game shows when I was a kid was Deal or No Deal. And the way the game worked is you had like 50 suitcases, and each suitcase had a dollar amount. And that was a dollar amount that you would get if you made it to the end of the game with the suitcase that you had. And so what they would do is you would pick the suitcase at the beginning, and then they would have you pick like 5 or 6 suitcases each round. And then you would open the suitcases on the board. And as that happened, the odds of you having a high number suitcase either increase or decrease. And then the uncertainty is whether or not you actually have the suitcase that you think you do. And so some of the more interesting episodes is when the person may have the $1 million suitcase, but all the other large amounts are gone. And so they have the chance of either winning $1 million or they have the chance of winning less than $20,000. And so now when they're getting the offers to continue, they have the opportunity to take a cash out where it's like, we'll give you $80,000 if you give us your suitcase. Now there is a chance that your suitcase has the less than $25,000, or there's a chance your suitcase has $1 million in it. How do you feel about your odds of winning? When we deal with uncertainty, more times than not, we end up choosing the safe path. We end up choosing what is the certainty. And this is actually an economic principle where the idea is that people would actually prefer a paycheck every week over every month, and they would prefer a paycheck every month over every quarter, and they would prefer a paycheck every quarter over every year. And even if they would get the most money if they took a paycheck once a year, it is more likely that they would choose the paycheck that is every week or every month, because that gives them the certainty that they feel they need. There is uncertainty around the fact that I may spend all of my money. How am I going to pay for my bills if I spend it all before December? So when you have that cushion of, well, I can get another check next week, or I can get another check next month, it makes you feel a lot more comfortable. The issue with the fear of uncertainty is we end up making decisions based on certainty, which may not exist in the first place, and we're giving up too much to get that. So if you look at some of the financial situations of 2008 and the Great Recession, you find that people lost a lot of money that were investing in the safe and certain choice of like a 401k and mutual funds, but there was very large and stable companies that went bankrupt. There is no true certainty. All you can do is make the best decision that you can with the information you have, and then keep moving forward. Because as you get more information, you're always going to find that you're going to be able to make better decisions. Now, that does not mean that you should stay forever in the analysis phase where you're always planning and you're always plotting, but you really want to accept the fact that no matter what the amount of time is, you're not going to know everything. You'll know enough to make a good decision, hopefully, but if you don't, that's okay too. Because whatever ends up happening, you'll find that the fear of uncertainty that you have, that the idea of worst case scenario is actually not that bad. we end up exaggerating the situation where we end up fighting to maintain a certain amount of certainty in our life, and we're actually not happy in that life. And you find that people that have like toxic relationships are the more common situations where they have the certainty of a spouse or they have the certainty of a significant other, but they have nothing else. They would do better to be in an uncertain situation and pursue a new relationship than they would be to continue in the same one, but they are unable or unmotivated to make that change because the fear of uncertainty has stagnated them. And you find that that is often what ends up happening with a lot of fears. We don't end up moving forward, which is why it's so important to control your stress and avoid that burnout so you can keep working towards the goal that you set for yourself so you can become the champion of your dream life. The strategy to overcoming the fear of uncertainty is to relax. You have to accept that there's a lot of things that you can control and a lot of things you can't. And this is important because when you allow yourself to go into that stress mode, it is kind of like going Super Saiyan. If you've ever watched like any of the Dragon Balls, I was a huge fan of them growing up, so that's why I made that reference. The idea is when you go into that stress mode, it's kind of like you're going into that fight or flight mode. And so your heart starts beating more rapidly and you start pumping in more blood. And it's almost like you're getting that adrenaline so that you're able to make that split-second decision to save your life. And if that means running, then you're going to run faster than you've ever ran before. And if that means fighting, then you're going to be like those stories of those moms lifting buses off their kids. The problem with going Super Saiyan, the problem with going into your stress mode is if you are doing it for in a long period of time, it is going to cause certain physical ailments, right? Your body is not meant to pump your heart that fast, and your body is not meant to tense your muscles up, and it's not meant for you to pump the extra blood that you need in those stress modes. But because of the way we are today, we find we're stressed all throughout our day. And this ends up causing different heart diseases and ailments, breathing problems, sleeping problems, eating problems. It really expands in all aspects of your life. So if you want to relax, there are some techniques that I always recommend, which is like breathing techniques where you take deep breaths in, deep breaths out, going on a walk and enjoying the sunlight. That natural air and that energy is always a good thing. Meditation is always a good one. And recently I came across another study that said humming one of your favorite songs actually helps you to manage your stress. So any of these strategies could work for you, so I suggest you try one or all of them. But if you want to overcome that fear of uncertainty, you're going to want to control that anxiety, that stress that you're feeling when you're not in control, or at least you're not sure what is going to happen. And the fifth fear we're going to talk about today is just the overall fear of change. And so it's important when you talk about the fear of change to understand that this could be something that is good or this could be something that is bad. So in a good, maybe you're getting married or you're moving into a home that you finally purchased. In the bad, it could be the loss of the job, or it could be the divorce, or some sort of physical ailment where things have drastically changed and you need surgery and you're just not sure if you're going to be able to walk again. All of these situations are overall large changes in your life, and this fear and anxiety that you feel has to do with a mixture of everything we've discussed so far. So there's the uncertainty, the fear of failure, the fear of losing control, and the fear of inadequacy. All have to do with just the overall changes that are taking place in your life. If you're talking about a marriage, and even though it's a good thing, maybe you're thinking not about the fact of saying I do because you're excited to do that. You may be thinking, whose house are we going to live in when we get married? What are our kids going to be raised as far as the religion is concerned? What kind of values does this other person have when it comes to money and spending and saving? What do we want to do as far as retirement is concerned? What is the overall work-life balance? All of these things are things that can make us uncomfortable and anxious when it comes to the idea of being married because we're not sure about what's going to happen. Even if you talked about it ahead of time, you still aren't 100% sure that person will not change over time, and their values may change. And if you allow yourself to stay within the fact of this change could lead to all these other changes, then you're not going to be excited about then you're not going to be as excited about the fact of getting married. And when we're talking about a negative change, you have the same issue. If you lost your job, then you're like, well, am I going to be able to get another job? Do I want another job? Should I try this industry? Do I need to go back to school and get another certification? Should I change my career altogether? What am I really focused on now? All these questions have to do with that one domino, but as you can see, they kind of string together a lot of other thoughts. And whenever you feel that overwhelm and that anxiety, then you know that the stress is creeping in. And again, like most of the stresses and fears that you are dealing with, it first comes to the reality that you can't do anything to keep that from happening. Another person and what their values are and what their values may become, you cannot do anything to keep them the way that they are today. So let's assume that you made the perfect decision and everything is great today. That doesn't mean everything will be great in 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years because life happens. Maybe they don't want kids now and they decide that they want kids later. Maybe they want kids now and they decide they don't want them later. Maybe you thought that you both wanted to save this certain amount of money and you find out that something drastic happens and now they want to spend. There's little that you can do to really overcome this fear of failure if your goal is to control all aspects of your life. So the only way you can overcome a fear of failure is to accept the fact that you don't have control over other people and that all you can do is make the best decision with the information that you have. You're going to find that that is a reoccurring theme when it comes to dealing with stress. You'll find whenever you're dealing with a lot of stresses that we're too worried about what may go wrong and we're not spending enough time thinking about everything that may go right. And if you focus on what is going to go wrong, then ideally you're going to find that there is always something to be stressed about. The reality is any of us could die at any given moment, and there is nothing that we can do to avoid that. Sure, we can wear a seatbelt when we drive, but that doesn't mean that we'll survive the accident. Sure, we can limit the times that we go out at night, but that doesn't mean that the drunk driver won't be there earlier. There is little that you can truly do to avoid certain aspects of your life changing. All you can do is make the best decision with the information that you have now. Do not wait to have all of the facts because that doesn't exist, because everything is constantly changing around you. There are people who bought a home days before the housing bubble crashed, and they had an appraisal, they had a real estate agent, they had an attorney look at all their documents, and everything based on the world that was the day before the crash was exactly as it should have been. But when the bubble crashed, and there were some people who felt that they knew it was happening, but when the bubble did crash, all of a sudden that decision is the worst decision that they could have ever made. They are now underwater on their mortgage, they have no equity, and now they're making payments on a home that may not ever recoup the equity that they are putting into it on their monthly 30-year payments. So you have to accept the fact that this could happen in any scenario, in any aspect of your life. And it's okay. Change is still a part of growth. So if you have to have the courage to change, if you want to be able to grow and become the champion of your dream life. And I'm always thankful for our time together. I hope that you enjoyed this. We have one more episode in this month's series on managing stress and avoiding burnout. If you have not, we do have a membership site at forecasthope.com, where we'll go into much deeper details on everything that I go over with you guys in these weekly workshops, where we'll have like courses and another community that's a private community, and you're able to get access directly to me for any other questions that you have. If that is something that is of interest to you, I invite you to go to forecasthope.com and just check it out. I always enjoy our time together. Continued blessings on the journey to become the champion of your dream life.